This is a Film Stories original podcast.
This is the story of the one. As the purchasing manager at a manufacturing plant, she knows the only thing more important than having the right safety gear is having it there when you need it. That's why she partners with Grainger for auto reordering, so her team members can count on her to have cut-resistant gloves on hand, and each shift can run safely and efficiently. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And so, we began. Ad Astra per Aspera. Through struggle. The stars.
Welcome back to We Are Starfleet, where we are covering the latest from Star Trek, Starfleet Academy. We Are Starfleet is a part of the Film Stories Podcast Network. Follow us at StarfleetPod on Blue Sky and Instagram, and check out our website, www.wearestarfleetpod.com, for more about the show, your hosts, and episode links. And yes, we have finally made it to the finale episode of Starfleet Academy, Rubicon. Wrapping up season-long villain arcs and will they, won't they plot devices, we see our cadets using the sum of their knowledge to save the Federation from a certain tragedy. I'm your host, Mike Slamer, and we have the full crew of cadets here with Ashley Thomas, Ian Buckley, and Craig McKenzie joining us on this beautiful, lovely early morning podcast recording. Thank you all for joining. How are we doing?
It's afternoon for me.
I have a
Full case.
Yeah, and I'm looking at very gray skies. You don't live that far away from me, buddy. I don't know what kind of beautiful day you're looking at.
It is a lovely day here in North Carolina.
I can see the sun shining on your face.
Yeah, it's coming in through the office window. I don't even have the blinds open. I have espresso in my Janeway mug, so we'll make it. We'll be okay.
Okay, so in about 10 or 20 minutes or so, Ashley's really going to come alive.
Yeah.
We all come alive when we have Star Trek to talk about.
Yeah, we certainly do.
This is true.
We certainly do.
This is true. Yeah, and this was a finale episode, and I don't know about you guys. Well, actually, we're literally here to talk about it, so I will know about you guys in a moment or two. But there was a lot to unpack in this episode. It felt like, even with an hour and change runtime, we did not get full closure for everything. Clearly, some things are being left for season 2 to pick up on. Definitely be curious to hear your thoughts on that. So let's just jump right into it. Folks, we are covering the finale. So if for some reason you have clicked on our show on your podcast player and you're listening to this and you say, oh, cool, We Are Starfleet, it's covering Starfleet Academy, you should have seen the finale by now. If not, go back and listen to a couple of the episodes and feel free to join us when you're ready. Okay. So, Ashley, I'm going to come to you first here. Overall thoughts on this episode as a finale as it relates to this show that we've just watched.
I had a great time. This was... overall, I enjoyed Starfleet Academy way more than I thought I would. And with this finale, I thought it was exciting. I thought you got some good Star Trek speeches in here. I love that we got, time with our cadets learning how to properly do their thing. You got Jet Reno in the captain's chair for a bit, and you never really don't get to see that before, and it's just great. There's a lot. I'm really excited to talk with you guys about it today. So overall, I'm very happy with the finale.
Great. Ian, yeah, Ashley mentioned lots of Starfleet discussions. The monologues were off the charts. Where you sit on this?
Yeah, I'd say overall more positive than negative. I think that, as Craig and I discussed in our discussion about last week's episode, we had some reservations about the stakes, the setup, the premise that was being established for the stakes of the finale, and I came away from it feeling like they didn't go in some of the directions I was worried they would go. I wouldn't say I was 100% loving all of the decisions, but honestly, most of the things that I had reservations about were sort of the vestiges of the decisions made in the previous episode, and so I'm going to try not to hold any of that like against the episode itself, which I thought did a pretty good job with the premise that they established and with the stakes that they established. And I was pleasantly surprised at where some of the characters ended up at the end of the season, at the end of the show, and therefore the end of the season. So I'm more positive than negative, and I could say that about the season overall. It's been a pretty pleasant surprise, despite some reservations.
Okay. Craig, coming to you on this. Overall thoughts on this episode. Big stakes in the finale here. Did
Not
they pay off
really,
for you?
no. I've really struggled with this finale. I found it very frustrating, and I've said this throughout the season, but my theory was that whenever Starfleet Academy returns to quote-unquote the plot, the big plot of the season, I was going to struggle with it because that's when it stops being Starfleet Academy. And that's exactly what's happened in the past 2 episodes. So I'm less engaged with the show when it's trying to be something that it's not, and I found it frustrating. I think a lot of the stuff it was doing in here was very strange in terms of choices. We'll get to the villain's downfall, for example. The fact that there is a villain is something that I've never thought was needed in this show at all. So, yeah, a bit of a damp squib as a finale, a bit of a frustrating end to the season. A season that I have mostly enjoyed, actually. Well, when it's being the show that I want it to be, when it's leaning into its actual premise, which this episode does not.
Fair enough. It's hard to step away from these big villains in Star Trek. I personally have really loved seeing Paul Giamatti really, ham it up on screen. I think he brought a lot to the role, and as a villain, it certainly serves. Does it serve in this show? Does it serve the season plot? Does it serve the overall narrative? We're going to get into this. So yes, folks, here we go. We are going to pick up right where the previous episode, 300th Night, leaves off, which is on the bridge of the USS Athena. Ashley, this opening sequence really worked for me as far as like setting the stage, coming off of 300th Night, the previous episode. We've rescued Tatiana Maslany.
Woo!
She's on the Athena, and our story picks up. Yeah, I love this sequence.
Yeah, this really exciting opening. We've got to hide the cadets. We've got to work our way through this problem. You've got 2 people who hate each other's guts. Maybe not hate. Hate's not the right word for Aki, I don't think. But Anisha's clearly not happy about hanging out with any Starfleet folks at all. But we're kind of forced into this position. And this is common to Star Trek across its 60-year history. Star Trek security can be spoofed so easily with this whole thing with like, okay, we can just adjust the air pressure a little bit, and therefore we can hide our life signs in the airlock. And I'm like, come on, really? Also, but to me, I love that the cadets were clever enough to figure that out. I think that's great. But yeah, just so much good character work that I really enjoyed. That made it really fun for me because I love the character work and stuff is what I love in any TV show, but I especially love it in Star Trek. But I if I can say one more thing, because I wasn't on the episode for 300th Night, Tatiana Maslany is like 2 months younger than me, and I'm like, how old is the fella that plays Caleb? Because I'm blanking on his name. I'm like, is she old enough to have like a 21-year-old kid? I was like, yeah.
She certainly doesn't look it when she comes back. I mean, how much time has passed?
Hey,
and she looks 0 years older.
Well, if you want to make a lady look a little older, you give her a short, no nonsense haircut. And Tatiana Maslany has an epic beautiful mane of curls like our bro Ian does over here. So I just, I'm like, hey, what can we do to make her look a little older, a little more like, I got shit to do. I ain't got time to do my hair. Let's cut that hair short.
How long is a human lifespan in the 32nd century? Because people were living to like 150 in the 24th. You have to imagine it's gotten better since then.
Fair.
Or maybe worse. Because
clean.
She also spent some time in prison. Her hair might have been, cut during that time, and she's in the process of letting it grow out.
Hey, fair.
Ian, there's a lot of discussion happening in this episode, but what I really enjoyed throughout is working out the problems in the dialogue. It wasn't just all of a sudden someone seemed to have the answer out of nowhere. They came to a conclusion.
Yeah, this was, I think, one of the things that I was concerned about going into the finale is, like, how are these problems that are being set up going to be resolved? I think speaking to Craig's point that he was just making about feeling like this is a Starfleet Academy show, what I was concerned about was that it was just going to be a sort of really action-packed finale where we're going to solve problems by, blowing shit up. And I didn't really think the show was going to do that, especially given that they're, it's not like they're on a well-armed ship anymore. But I just, I was worried it would be a little action heavy, and I enjoyed that we essentially got, the two branches of the plot were, sort of classic Star Trek kind of mock trial kind of thing, which was also a touch point for me in school. I definitely did mock trials in school, so I was like, hey, it's not the students, but we are getting a mock trial in Starfleet Academy, and that's kind of nice. That's school-like. And then, with the cadets on the ship, they're talking through their problems. They're, trying to figure out a technical problem, a technical solution to a technical problem, working together. I do wish that there were just a little bit more of the organic team building built in throughout the season, where we got a little bit of a glimpse of a bad bridge simulation that went down, I think, 2 episodes ago, and that was a disaster. And Jet name checks at the end of this, like, well, this went better than the simulation. But I did want just a little bit more, I think, group cohesion by the end of this season. I like the individual moments that the characters got with one another. But I was really hoping for just a moment where the whole group all together on the bridge was having like a triumphant moment, and they were a little scattered by the plot, and I get why, because the plot necessitated that. But I was hoping for a little bit more of a unified moment for them as a crew. But I did overall like that it was talking through problems, working out solutions, and that it didn't involve a lot of fireworks and explosions and death.
Well, yes, I do think the major fake out by the Doctor that happens in this opening sequence is a really cool way to kind of get him into the plot. Craig, the Doctor's Gambit, how did you feel about it? How did you feel about the Doctor getting involved in some tactical maneuvering?
It's fine. I mean, it's one of those, we've got this thing that we can pull out of our sleeve and make happen, and it makes use of the fact that he's not a corporeal being, so yeah, sure, he can extend his holographic matrix and hide the ship, and there are consequences to it, at least in the sense that he's incapacitated for the rest of the episode. So it's not oh, that worked, anyway, on with the next problem. It was, there was a kind of cost to it, which I liked. But it's just one of those, let's do a really cool thing because it looks cool. It's like when they copy the let's fly into the atmosphere of a gas giant from 2009 as well, when it's a very similar shot as well, where they do that. So yeah, the Doctor's plan was fine.
Anything on this opening sequence here, because I just felt like as a finale, it really drove home the energy that we were coming into on this.
Well, it didn't make a huge impression on me. It was just a way to get the Athena, or the bridge of the Athena, which is some of the ship. The rest of the ship is somewhere else, heavily damaged, so they couldn't get involved right away. My favorite stuff in the episode was Reno commanding the cadets and getting them to fix the ship.
Oh, yeah.
And then turning them into teachable moments, because we still have this to be a school show. So she says, B, she gives them grades as they come up with the right solution. And which is very good. I think Reno is the actual MVP of the show, to be honest. I think she's better placed here than she ever was in Discovery, and has really stepped up. I think it's really, really well done in this episode. That was my favorite stuff. So...
yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that at length.
But the opening sequence, again, fine. I mean, it's the same as the Doctor using himself to hide them. It was all right. We've seen it before.
Yeah. Very, very typical, I think, of like the modern Star Trek era that, this opening followed. I could see this happening in Star Trek Discovery. I could see it happening in Strange New Worlds. Very similar setup, with how the villain is introduced by beaming onto the bridge of the ship and sitting in the captain's chair.
That's part of my problem, actually,
no one likes to see
because
that.
I want Starfleet Academy's finale to be doing something that only Starfleet Academy can do. And that's just not what we got here, which is really frustrating, because you have this show with this supposedly unique premise that you can do unique things, but you're just not doing them. You're just doing the same old stuff. I've already seen this in Hegemony or whatever. I don't need to see it again. Or episode 6 is your finale. They go on a training mission and it goes horribly wrong and they all have to step up. That would be in keeping with the show.
Well, instead, we go to trial. Nus Braka puts Nala Ake, and by proxy the entire Federation, on trial for apparently the crime of destroying his colony. Let's get it out of the way. We're going to talk about the trial now. We're going to talk about the entire sequence that takes place in the defaced atrium of Starfleet Academy in the secondary hull of the USS Athena. Lots of graffiti, lots of, destroyed trees, right? Vandalism going on. What I found interesting, Ashley, is Nus Braka talks a big game very conveniently about how this is, a new paradigm. It's not just the evil Federation coming in. Now it's the Venari Rao is here to save the day, as if they're the ones who are the heroes. Didn't look that way to me. I think Nus Braka had a hell of a lot of arrogance coming into this, thinking that people of the quadrant were just going to accept that this is happening. How'd you like this?
I thought this was a really, really interesting commentary on, quote unquote, news. If you look at the, Mike, you know OBS. You look at the OBS overlay and the ticker tape running at the bottom about, former Vance aide says he's a real dick or whatever. He's talking this big game. He's using, you and Cipriana and I talked in episode 6 about how annoyed we are that Nus Braka is so charming, and yet we're like, this guy is awful. Yeah. But I love it every time he's on screen, because it's, he's just hamming it up. He's fascinating to watch. He's got this bluster about him, and he is really leaning into that in this trial scenario. So I thought that was really interesting. I took notes about the. I was just kind of observing what was going on the little ticker tape and the station identification. It was Venari Rawl Worldwide News or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just is this a real channel, or did you just, pirate every frequency and we're blasting this to everyone, so why it's good for him to be in charge and not Starfleet, and we're gonna put Nala Ake on trial for all of Starfleet's crimes. So I don't know. I just thought that whole scenario was just really interesting. It felt very meta in our current socio-political moment. It felt very real. I've got more thoughts on it, but that's for later in the episode. So.
Ian, Nus Braka definitely reminds me of some of these podcast bros with some of that charisma that Ashley mentioned.
Yeah, it's almost like anti-charisma if you're not into it,
Yeah.
because it becomes so repellent. Like the extent to which Nus Braka is charismatic and compelling is, I think, more reflective of just Paul Giamatti's talent and charisma as a performer. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit more in line with Craig on this, where I've always been a little bit skeptical about whether a Starfleet Academy show needed a capital V villain. I'm glad he's in the show as little as he is. I think you guys probably may remember at the beginning I expressed some anxiety that like he was going to appear all the time and that we were just constantly, because I was just never really into the mode that, you know, again, has nothing to do with Paul Giamatti's performance, but just I've never really bought into this particular show needing this particular character as a dramatic engine. And I'm glad we're going to be, you know, saying see you later to him for at least a while. It seems like he's not in season 2. Maybe he'll come back. We'll see. But I did, to Ashley's point, appreciate the commentary that the show at least was trying to have through this character of, you know, truth is all about like who's presenting it and how they're presenting it. And you know, that becomes the reality to people who are taken in by the charisma of these folks or by the, you know, the seeming strength of their argumentation, as shallow as, you know, you or I might know better. We might have more information, but like the people who are tuning in and listening to this guy see him as an authoritative source. And so anything he says, no matter how unfounded we may know it to be, like they'll take it at face value. And what makes him especially dangerous is where he weaves in truth and authentic commentary and criticism into his bullshit, which allows him to sell it to more people.
I wish they'd taken this further, because I did find this interesting. If Braka is supposed to be this populist figure, then he shouldn't have allowed a situation to exist where he could be proven wrong in front of everybody. And the perhaps real life figure that Ashley was alluding to, that this may be commenting on, would never let that happen. It would be a very carefully constructed trial, quote unquote, that would be designed to prove him exactly right. So the fact that he had someone there that could say, no, you're wrong, and then have it all crash down around him, just seems a bit at odds with what they're trying to do here. And a problem with the Venari Ral as well, it's the same as the Emerald Chain. You think they're a small organization that, you know, give people a bloody nose, metaphorically, as they steal or plunder or whatever. And then suddenly they were a massive power in the quadrant. And the Venari Ral are the same. I'm not sure which they're supposed to be. And that, as much as the world building in the show has been better than Discovery did with the 32nd Century, there are still these gaps. So if you're putting the Federation on trial for, they're trying to expand again, this is bad, you have to really know who the major powers are that might not like that. Because here's all these leaders of worlds or whatever that are around here to witness this. Who are they? Like, why are they here? Why don't they like the Federation?
Yeah.
What is the actual texture to this argument? And yeah, is Braka trying to be Gul Dukat? Is that what they're trying to do with him? Because he's nowhere near as rich or as textured as Dukat is. And he can't be, because he's only in 3 episodes and Dukat is in, I don't know how many, across 7 seasons, but he's in a lot. But the way they developed that character was, yeah, he's obviously a war criminal. He's obviously a horrible person. He's done really horrible things and will continue to do horrible things as long as it suits him. But there's something kind of likable about him. There's something about him that people warm to. And I feel like they're trying to shoot with that with Braka, but they don't quite get there. But it's just the fact that the trial ends with his downfall that he allows to happen just makes no sense for me. It just, you have a Nisha Mir there that can say the thing that tears him apart, and he shouldn't do that. Like, if he's going to have, he doesn't even have to have the real Anisha there. He could just have someone that he says is Anisha who's programmed to say exactly what he wants everybody to hear. Because if it is about, I'm reporting the truth here, And because I'm saying it, because I have the broadcast resource, it's therefore the truth. He could completely engineer it whatever way he wants. He doesn't even have to have Aki there. He just have to have someone that says they're Aki.
I would argue that Nus is so arrogant that he thinks that he is right and telling the truth. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to do this so nobody can say I made this up or whatever, or, you know, having like a fake Aki or a fake Anisha there. He's got the real folks. And he's like, yeah, he's so convinced that he's right that, yeah, he's like, there's no need to even try to spoof it up.
And then he's just stupid then, which is a different problem.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of the point. Like Nus is not as smart as he thinks he is. Like, he's smart, but he's not as smart. Sorry,
he's
Mike.
convinced that both Anisha and Nala hate each other. So, well, that Anisha hates Nala, and that Nala's not going to get anywhere that she needs to with Anisha in order to kind of change her mind and flip to her side. So, as far as he's concerned, Anisha is still on his team.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we have to, if we're talking about what's motivating him and how he's behaving, I think we do have to bring up the point at the end of this, you know, mock trial, which is essentially that, like, he experienced a childhood trauma that locked in and crystallized a misunderstanding about the way the universe works, and locked in a misguided sense of an injustice having been visited upon him and his planet, and that has warped everything since then. That, like, quantum singularity of shittiness has warped his reality, his entire life, to the point where he now is convinced of these facts. This is the reality, you know, according to him. And I think we can, like, nitpick whether or not he acts in a way that's logical based on his understanding of the world, but I do think it's a sincere misunderstanding. Like, I do think he thinks the Federation's guilty. Whether or not his actions, you know, are logical or the smartest is a separate issue, but I do believe him when he says that he thinks the Federation did something wrong. I do think there's a kernel of at least him feeling like he was actually wronged at some point.
And the trial would have been more effective if he had at least had a point somewhere in there. So this whole argument of the Federation failed me and it may have failed you too back when you needed it the most. So that's an interesting angle. And it reminds me of in the first season of Picard, where Picard leaves the Federation on principle. He quits on principle because they screwed up the Romulan relocation. And the Admiral calls him out on his hubris because there was other stuff going on and we had to make tough choices. And that argument is brought up here. But this, you know, and it's something that they go into a little bit, but they don't push it far enough. It's just this notion of there was tough choices and people suffered and we made possibly the wrong choices. And like the way Aki puts it is if they made the right choices. But if there'd been some acknowledgement of we don't always get it right, we certainly didn't get it right in some instances that we could name, and make the Federation a bit more complex, because this is a complex era, or it's supposed to be, where things are falling apart and they're rebuilding. So the kernel of a point in there would have made it more powerful, I think.
I think that the parallel of Nus Braka's childhood trauma, and of course Caleb Mir's childhood trauma, and then of course Tarima Sadal's childhood trauma, and you know how they deal with it, how they form their own little groups to support each other. Nus Braka did not have those groups. So Ian, like you said, that thought process crystallized in his mind that the Federation is responsible for all the pain he's ever endured through his life. And he saw that come to life with the Mir family. And he uses that as the crux to get at Anisha. But Anisha has realized through this conversation, through these moments, the few moments that she had with her son, that the tables have now turned and Starfleet isn't what she was led to believe. And Craig, to your point, I do think it's pretty complex because throughout this trial, it sort of seems to me that who is right and who is wrong is necessarily in the eye of the beholder at any given moment. Yes, in that moment, Anisha Mir, by getting the schematics to the shuttle, was just trying to feed herself and her kid. That's an age-old morality tale that we ask kids today. Like, what do you do if someone steals a piece of bread, right? At the end of the day, though, what resulted was someone's murder, and that's where she had to take that accountability and responsibility. And we can, of course, quibble over how that plays out in the 32nd century Starfleet. But it did seem to me that, Nala was basically saying, like, yeah, we did have to make hard choices, and people did lose, including us. We lost the most. That was sort of the sentiment that I was getting from that conversation. But I thought Anisha's monologue, when she's tearing into Aki, oh man, that was some heavy stuff. That every time you close your eyes, I want you to see me. Oh man, and that wasn't a villain talking to the hero. That was just two people talking to each other about, like, this hardship is something that I've experienced because of you, rightly or wrongly.
And Anisha was right as well with that teardown, because Aki didn't suffer. She didn't lose anything by resigning. She walked into a cushy teacher position. So that's attacking her privilege. So you had monumental privilege that you could just walk away from your career at Starfleet because it doesn't cost you anything. Whereas she's had a lot of tough decisions to make for her survival out there. So yeah, it's a point of principle, but it's a point of privileged principle. Like, would she have resigned if she didn't have anywhere to go? We'll never know, but the implication is no, it's a principled thing, and then she found something else to do that she quite liked doing, so it's not really a problem. And then she got headhunted to be the Chancellor of Starfleet Academy, so again, hasn't lost anything.
Yeah, and it didn't exactly look like, when they plucked her out of whatever she was doing, like she was miserable on Bajor.
Yeah. She was loving her Bajoran daycare job. Yeah, it was fine.
Right, yeah, she didn't seem tortured by guilt or anything like that. It is, I think, a good point. That was also one of my favorite moments. Really, I love Tatiana Maslany. I think she was fabulous in this episode. I thought all of her scenes, especially once it got to the trial, were really effective, and I thought it was a very compelling line of questioning. And I thought it was a good thing to have these concepts interrogated, these characters interrogated in this way, because I do also think it's a little bit reflective of the way that some Star Trek fans felt when we were presented with this 32nd century reality of, like, this doesn't feel like the Federation. This doesn't feel like how Starfleet is supposed to act. And it does feel like grappling with, like, yes, this was a challenging, extremely stressful time, and we're trying to aim for those ideals we used to prioritize. And I think that the show is at its best when it's fulfilling its promise of being a show about school and addressing these themes of how do we come together again after an extended period of such extreme anxiety and fear and hostility.
I think there's a really great discussion to be had here about law, about justice, and about mercy. And I think this is really nuanced well in both Anisha and Ake's argument. Like Aki fully admits she messed up, and the Federation did not do right by Anisha, but she also has to get Anisha to admit, like, we understand how you got where you did, but at the same time, your actions cost a man his life. Like, on his last shift, where he was
2
about
days
to
before
retire.
retirement.
Of course. I mean, like,
Of
him
course.
and Commander Tomov, that man, R.I.P., about to go on, get some downtime, and not so much. You're going to get some permanent downtime. So, yeah, it's. I thought that was really nuanced well, and I think science fiction is one of the best genres to be able to nuance that kind of stuff to get people to understand what does that look like in the real
Wouldn't
world.
it be more?
And here,
wouldn't it be more interesting if it was Anisha that had pulled the trigger, though, that killed that officer, rather than Braka, and Braka just lied about it to protect her or something like that? That's where you would get that extra bit of complexity in there, because it would be, well, yeah, she did something really bad that she regrets, and then, well, in order for that to play out, she would have to go back to prison at the end of the season rather than just get to go wherever she wants, because she still broke out of prison. But
I thought that's what they were going to do for a moment, based on how she reacts, like how she's thinking about. I mean, obviously she's racked with guilt either way.
But she was just there, though. She didn't pull the trigger, which I think would have been far more interesting. Cause,
it feels like it pulls the punch a little bit.
Because then Caleb would have been able to look at his mother and be like, "You're the one that shot that guy."
I don't think it makes it, but I think it's to the point of the show. It doesn't make her irredeemable. That's the point, is that she did something awful. She acknowledges it, and we move forward somehow, because this is an optimistic future in which that kind of thing is impossible, even if we here in the 21st century have a hard time imagining that.
What were you going to say, Mike?
I was just going to say that in my mind, when we talk about, law and justice, Anisha was essentially the accessory to murder here, where she provided the schematic to break into the shuttle. So she does hold some responsibility for the pilot's death. Yeah. And I don't think it necessarily takes away any complexity that she was not the one who fired. It makes perfect sense for it to be Braka. All his boisterous, his arrogance, his attitude.
He's violent.
He's a violent, chaotic person. So that made sense to me. And also, I think if Anisha was the one to pull that trigger, when Caleb is listening to this address and he's hearing what Braka is saying, and he's hearing what Anisha is saying, and he realizes, oh, I didn't just lose my mom because Starfleet took her. She committed an actual crime. She did something bad that led to somebody getting hurt. And right then and there, he had that experience with Commander Tomov, who stepped up for him. And he had that experience with Bobby, who stepped up for him. And he realized this is what Starfleet is, and these are the people who came down to give us food, and my mom prevented that from happening. So yes, he does have that love and forgiveness, and he realizes that it's not as serious as actually being the one to pull the trigger. But I think it would have soured the relationship between Caleb and Anisha in a way that would not have been compelling.
I think also Anisha is a moral enough person to where it doesn't have to be a situation where she pulled the trigger for her to realize this was a bad deal. Like, she already, like, she understands why she did it, because it was like a life or death situation for her kid. They were going to starve.
Yeah.
And so you totally understand how she got there, but she is so, like, wrapped up in why she did it, she's missing what the results of those actions were, even if, you see how she got there. And I think she's a moral enough person to where knowing that somebody got killed is enough, even if she didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah. What I really liked about how this all shakes out, of course, is the very excellent wrap-up to this portion. When Sam is finally able to break the barrier and complete the algorithm. And then it's just like Starfleet warps in instantaneously and completely takes over. The show of strength, the show of power. We all love that, cavalry moment. Ashley, I loved that the Discovery was kept off screen. Would I have loved to maybe just see one little flyby?
Yeah, I got to interview Mary Wiseman for Fangirlish, and she told me that Sonequa actually got to visit the set during the first season, and I was like, does that mean we might get to see Michael? And, you know, my girl crush on Michael Burnham and Sonequa Martin Green is extremely high. So I was like, hey, am I get to see my girl Michael, you know, swoop in on the disco? No, but I'm glad we didn't. As much as I would have loved that, I'm glad we didn't, because that keeps the focus on, hey, this is Starfleet Academy. Like Violet said in y'all's coverage of episode 3, Ian and Craig, she reacts to things with her feels, with her emotions, and that's kind of how I react to a lot of this stuff as well. So I'm getting choked up, like with you know, the big speechifying towards the end, and then everybody comes in. I'm just like, it's so beautiful. And my girl Sam, like doing her fancy hologram hacking stuff to tear down the oh my gosh, the
Omega 47.
Omega 47. I was remembering the 47. And you know, 47 is apparently a running joke in Star Trek. I'm
repeated so often that it's just not funny anymore.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, we got an Omega 47. I see what you did there. So anyway, she's bringing that wall down. Oh gosh, it was just very emotionally satisfying for me.
A lot of big moments to celebrate here. Craig, I know you made some comments about the stakes being a little too high for you. Elaborate. Tell us more about this Omega 47
the Omega 47. So I've taken the note that Braka has somehow mined 80,000 cubic light years of space. So he's covered the entire Federation in a bubble of Omega 47, and he has the detonator.
Secretly.
He did it without anybody noticing, and he managed to put together enough mines in a few short months to do this. That's ridiculous as far as stakes go. It's just too big, and it becomes meaningless at that point because it is so large and so insane. It's like, if you just think about the resources that would need to be invoked in order to make that happen, and yeah, it's a common complaint in modern Star Trek where the writers don't seem to understand science fiction, so they don't have any concept of how big a light year is and how many minds you need.
Yeah.
You need trillions. I mean, I like trillions is maybe even too small a number. I don't know, but there isn't a gap in that barrier at all. It's a perfect sphere,
and you see that they are like not that far apart, which makes it even more ridiculous. There's no appropriate sense of scale for what this would actually entail. And the other thing that this last episode made a little bit more muddy for me were the stakes again, because in the previous episode I thought what was at stake was they were simply going to be like walled off, cut off from, because you couldn't warp through, you know, the space
or
that
spore
these
jump
things detonate
for some
in.
reason. Yeah.
Or apparently spore jump. I guess, nobody certainly asked a question about, well, what can Discovery do about this? Interesting.
They do bring it up. It's like, could Discovery get out? Nah, they can't for reasons.
Oh,
No.
I must have missed that line of dialogue. Sorry. But I did.
It's a blank
I did
and you
have
miss
that
it.
question.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, but like, why would that be true? Whatever, doesn't matter. Apparently it's true. But then in this episode, they talk about how it'll be a death sentence for everyone. Like, will it? Like, I get that it'll suck, but you'll be cut off. But like, you're talking about most of an entire quadrant of the galaxy. Like, why would it be a death sentence? Like, that just muddied it again for me.
Again, space is very big, and it's possible for you to set those off without hitting anybody, because space is so big.
Well, the thing is, like, you actually see images like the one we're looking at right now, where you see all of this empty space surrounded by this ring. It looks to me like it's saying that ring will be impassable space and everything inside it will be fine but cut off. And for it to now be apparently a death sentence for everyone, like, whoa, is that... Like, that doesn't seem what Braka is talking about, is killing everyone inside. Like, I was just, again, like, confused by what exactly are these stakes supposed to be.
So what I understood them to be was that Nus Braka set this up, and there's a whole bunch of planets in the blast zone which, if he sets it off, will completely eliminate all those planets. But in the meantime, the ideal was that Venari Rao could go and basically plunder all those planets, and the Federation could do nothing about it.
As long as they're not planning to use warp drive to get to them, I suppose.
That was a little iffy to me. I was like, how are you going to do that if the whole purpose of the thing... Anyway, there were some questions, but that was the justification, the reasoning that was given for it, which to me didn't make a ton of sense because... of course, this is space. There's X, Y, and there's Z. And, we're looking at a topographical map of space, which is kind of tough to visualize. But is this, can't they just fly up and over?
You see that in the previous episode, that it's essentially a bubble they've been encased in. So that they've at least thought of that, but not thought of the sheer scale of the situation.
Yeah.
And then stakes that are this large, you can only really get around them with a ludicrous solution as well, which in this is very Voyager. It's literally people saying nonsense and then not quite pressing buttons, but Sam waving her hands over a hologram until the problem is solved, because there is no actual organic way to solve an issue like that. But yeah, it felt very Voyager for me, where it's, it's the equivalent of Janeway saying, reroute power to this system, Harry Kim saying, I've done it, we're fine. And then they move on. There was a lot of Voyager climaxes that were just that, and that's how they diffused the situation in this episode as well.
I thought it was interesting, like the sheer amount of technobabble in this episode. Yeah. I think this is the most technobabble I've ever heard in any episode of Star Trek ever.
Surely not.
And I was like... I mean, I don't know. It was making my head spin. I was trying to track with everything that Reno was saying and all of that. So, again, you guys are much longer steeped in Trek than I am, but it's the most I could remember, at least in recent memory.
At least they did highlight that we usually solve these problems by saying nonsense and then pressing buttons, where they literally had the Doctor saying nonsense. But calling out your problem by replicating it isn't really solving the problem.
What did you guys think about the Darmok and Jalada Tanagra kind of moment that the Doctor had here?
I thought that really, this really just occurred to me. I thought that really played well with how Sam helped Caleb figure out how to connect with his mom. Like, okay, you're thinking like 21-year-old Caleb, what would 6-year-old Caleb know? What would 6-year-old Caleb think? And it's this kind of leaned back into that, like, okay, what's something, how do you connect with your dad? Also, just hearing Sam call the Doctor Dad just makes my heart so happy. Just warmed my little black heart. I just thought that was so sweet. Anyway, the way that she was able to deduce what he was actually trying to say while he was a little bit scrambled, I thought was really cool and just highlighted that personal
I wasn't
connection.
sure why the Doctor would know this, though. How does he know how Omega-47 works?
Yeah, let's unpack this for a second, because I had the same question, Craig.
I don't have an answer. It's just, and I don't think the person that wrote the episode has an answer either. It's just the Doctor's saying nonsense, and it has to mean something, and it means this. It's again, it's a Voyager solution. People say nonsense, then they press buttons, and it's problem solved.
It was a little out of left field that he just suddenly had the answer. Now,
I didn't have the answer half an hour before when he could speak normally.
In the scene where they're in the quarters and Jaden is looking over the Doctor's systems and kind of they're talking through it, right? In that scene, you can see the Doctor in camera view, standing by the window with his arms behind his back. And then when it cuts to his face, he's clearly thinking through something. And the viewer is meant to think, okay, he's thinking through what is this problem? But he is repeating the same phrases about the gluon and the bonding and the Rubicon, cross the Rubicon, oh, wait a second. And then it seems like every time the camera cuts to him, there's almost like another eyebrow raise. So he's doing a lot of face acting in that moment. And the only thing I can come up with, Craig, is that he naturally solved the problem because that's all he had to do was to take time to think about it while everybody else figured out how to fix his communication system. That's the only thing I can think about that makes sense, that the Doctor would have the answer for solving the Omega-47 particle
Yeah,
problem.
but he's a doctor. Where's that knowledge coming from?
Well,
I feel like the Doctor just knows a lot of things. He's been around for 1,000 years.
Yeah, I think we're underplaying the extent to which he, in theory, has a more or less photographic memory because it's artificial, and that it's 1,000 years old, and that he's able to have worked out because, to Mike's point, he has some spare bandwidth right now for thought that the others are too busy with other stuff to spend, and he came up with a solution. Like, I'd have to watch the episode again to see if they seed it a little bit in there. Like, I obviously missed the line about discovery, so like maybe I missed something else, but I interpreted it as, yeah, pretty much like what Mike said. He happened to figure it out because he was thinking about it, and then of course once he figured it out, he couldn't communicate it clearly, and so that became a challenge to overcome. But yeah, I just interpreted it as there was, he had a bit of a eureka moment at just the wrong time.
The whole Omega-47 of it all, though, it's in terms of what it represents. So they try and bring it up where they talk about it being, the Federation were making this, and Aki says it's an energy source. And yeah, but it could also be a very dangerous weapon. And why are you working on this in secret? It's the nuclear deterrent argument, isn't it? Like, if you have this thing so that people won't attack you because you'll just use it on them. And in theory, I guess, all these other major powers that we've never heard of could have their own form of that's a nuclear deterrent. But the fact that the Federation are researching this thing in secret would seem to be a significant argument that really isn't dug into in any way.
Well, wasn't it being researched as a source of energy for warp travel?
That's what they say.
Yeah. But in secret, in a classified research place.
Because they know that like, again, we as audience members who've watched Voyager know that, like, there's a protocol.
Well, there used to be.
There used to be. That's, I guess, one of the other things that's changed. And maybe that's supposed to illustrate the desperation where, wow, even the protocol around Omega changed as a response to the collapse of warp travel as we knew it. I guess I would have loved just a touch more exploration of that, because it seems like a big, like, oh, so, like, you're just pulling a whole big, like, nah, it's okay, trust us, bro, when it comes to developing something that was deemed for centuries to be so dangerous that it needed to be destroyed upon detection no matter
it's like,
what.
Whoops, one accident and we've torn apart space. Oh, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had totally forgotten that was a Voyager plot point until this very moment. So thank you guys for the reminder. Am I remembering
correctly, was Omega mentioned in reference to 10C as well? Were they not using it as a power source?
I don't think so, but I think that was a lot of fan speculation when people were still wondering about what the deal was with 10C, what was actually going on. People were like, maybe it's Omega. Because it's this horrible, destructive thing. Yeah. and now apparently it's just something that Starfleet experiments on in secret.
Well, that's how it came to exist in the first place, or at least that's how Starfleet discovered it in the first place, when they were researching it, and then their facility blew up and you can't go to warp in that sector anymore. So basically, well, Braka does say they've created something that all but guarantees another burn will happen, and that seems to be a very strong argument. That's a very Braka has a point here argument, because people outside the Federation be like, so they're developing this, it can do this, and they kept it secret. Okay,
True.
There's your mistrust.
There's a lot to be said with the Omega particle, and I do think that the show seeds it a little bit in terms of Starfleet's desperation when they show the episode with the Miyazaki as a training ground. The Miyazaki was destroyed testing out a new quantum singularity drive. So I do think that post-burn, we are seeing Starfleet kind of contend with, okay, we had some experiments that went south.
Yeah, it's another facet of, obviously, the Federation has been doing things that we would be very surprised to see them
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
over the last
definitely.
100
I
years.
think their facility of references still exists. The one that has Kirk's corpse on ice and all these other
Oh,
things.
1000% it does.
Let's hope so.
I'm gonna say it's just another kind of demerit against the modern streaming era of television. If we had more episodes, if they cared to give us, the full 24 that 90s Trek was able to get, then yeah, I feel like a lot of these questions that we have, a lot of these little tidbits and quibbles that we may have would all just generally be answered over the course of the show. But once again, we get 10 episodes and they have to pick and choose the best of the best of what gets shown. I thought, for example, that this season was taking place over the course of, maybe 2 or 3 months. And surprise, surprise, last episode, it's, an entire academic year has passed. So there are time skips and jumps that I wish were made more clear, through different character growth moments.
Well, if you want to touch on character growth moments, I think over the past 2 episodes, the Caleb deflecting and telling his friends what he really thinks of them, so he can kind of shrug off the emotions of I have to go with my mom, but I don't actually want to leave you guys. He apologizes for it in the airlock, but still, you get some good growth moments. You also have Sam, who's I've applied for a single next year because I'm different from the Sam that I used to be, and you can't see that. And there's some interesting interpersonal dynamics that I thought were interesting. I wish we'd had a little more time to explore those, but again, like you said, Mike, we are subject to the 10 episode season.
We are.
Or like I always criticize in Strange New Worlds, let these animosities linger for a little while before you resolve them. Because even though we're wrapping up a season here, you don't have to resolve them here. So you could have, for example, when Sam calls Genesis out on, "You've always had me as your sidekick. That's always been our relationship," and it could be well, actually, that's right. That's what I have been doing, and I'm sorry for that. But Sam's like, "But I still don't like it, and I'm not." I don't feel so close to you anymore because I've realized that's what's going on here. And you could have these things. It's if this is going to be CW or Star Trek, Star Trek 90210, as people criticizing it. I do want these, these little niggles to niggle for a while, and for people to be not always getting along.
Yeah, it's just so hard on the time frame. I mean, she changed personalities 2 episodes ago, and now we're having conflict about that, and also resolving it all within the span of a scene. It's this should be something that plays out over an episode or 2.
Just have it be the spine of your first episodes
want
of the season next season that they have to
exactly
move through
to
this.
Ashley's point. I want these character moments. I want these character beats, these emotional developments. I just want them to play out over a more, realistic or at least less rushed feeling time frame, rather than it, this conflict be brought up and resolved all in one scene. Have it play out over the course of an episode or 2, please. Let these dynamics play out.
Yeah. Because it was Genesis, you always see me as your sidekick, and I don't like that. And she's like, "No, I don't." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then that's it. So,
yeah, Sam grappling with her newfound individuality is a super interesting plot point in and of itself, and deserves more than, I would say, 5 minutes of screen time to actually get into it, because she's coming back with 17 years worth of memories now of being, fully grown person with the Doctor as her dad. So, it's a new perspective, and she's looking back on her memories and suddenly understanding, oh, this is who I was. And she's even, I think it's a little meta that she's basically cringing at herself. She finds how she acted to be embarrassing.
Well, and don't we all do that?
Yeah.
I certainly remember being in high school, college, and looking back at my younger self, I was like, oh gosh, I'm so cringe. I'm so, as the youths say these days. I'm so embarrassed for how I previously acted, and gosh, let's hope I don't look back at myself next year and think the same thing. So I I think that felt very relatable to me, especially as, Sam reads neurodivergent. As somebody who's neurodivergent, I felt a lot of those same emotions about myself, and that to me felt so real for seeing Sam in that same predicament.
Ian, we mentioned in our coverage of the previous episode that they really should have leaned into this new parental relationship that Sam and the Doctor have, and because the flashbacks or the montage of her growing up was very idyllic, despite the point of it being she's learning resilience as she grows up. So it should have included things like her falling over and skinning her knee or something like that, just to show that there is resilience developing here and she's going to come back with it. And you almost need a full episode of that that montage extended into at least a few more scenes to see how that relationship works, because you can have the Doctor develop out of this too. He can maybe feel anxious about the fact that he made mistakes as a parent, or he wasn't prepared to be a parent in the way that he thought he was. And there's all this rich texture here that they could have that they don't really have time for. And then it manifests as Sam saying, I'm different now. I really don't like the person I used to be. Or I'm looking at these relationships that I had differently, but we're not getting the texture of it, which is what the interesting stuff should be.
And he's exploring a new dual role too, as I am a teacher now and a parent. I am an administrator in this school and a parent. All of that for him could be interesting to explore. I'm glad they at least touch on it a little bit more in this episode, where she's unable to get back to being helpful because she's so worried about like her dad. She has this additional layer of emotional complexity in that relationship that is now going to have an effect on her. And so I do like that they're acknowledging that these relationships have shifted, the dynamics have shifted. I hope we see more in-depth exploration of all of the potentially thorny and interesting issues that could emerge from that in the next season.
Well, because the Doctor's plenty annoying, so he could. There's definitely things. If he was your dad, you would cringe at. He's like, oh, he's singing opera again. No one's told him he can't really sing that well. It's that kind of stuff.
Right. You can kind of flip the script where before he was sort of like, I want to keep Sam at an arm's length. Like I'm going to try and get out of this situation, to where she's now being like, ugh, Dad, and trying to get away from him.
Quick question, Ian, Craig. How does a photonic skin their knee?
Well, I mean, it would be the simulation of a skinning knee. It doesn't have to be exactly skinning knee, but these classic childhood hardships that we all have. Even the happiest childhood has hardship of some sort, and it is something like skinning your knee, or
the first time another kid doesn't want to play with you. There are some emotional traumas.
How traumatized is it that she had to live 17 years with only the Doctor in the Academy atrium? That's just
right.
Well, that explains how she's still, anything that comes across as a little bit quirky or a little bit off, it's like, well, look at who raised her in isolation. What were we really expecting?
Oh, gosh. No, I kid. It just, it struck me funny. It's like, how does a photonic skin their knee? Anyway, back on track.
I want to talk a little bit about the Jet Reno's leadership on the USS Athena here, using crisis management as teachable moments, showcasing her own command style and very effective teaching. One thing I noticed is that when the Athena goes to warp to go to Ukek and rescue Anisha and Caleb Mir and the other cadets, there's no crew. It's just Jet Reno, the Doctor, and of course Captain Nala Aki. So in spite of all the Trek marketing talking about, oh, look at all these characters we have. Look at this bridge crew. Look at Becky Lynch from the WWE. Nobody. There's nobody. So it's a skeleton crew. The cadets have to kind of fill in on all these positions here, and it's not a simulation. Craig, I'm going to come to you first here. This particular segment of the finale was awesome. Do you disagree?
No, I really liked Reno acting as the commander and teacher at the same time. I like that she was This is the final exam. If we survive, you all pass, and that's yeah, it's a great little dry humor there. She had that great quote. I've got it here. This is what it's like to be alone in space with no hope of rescue on a broken ship. You can let your fear take you down, or you can identify it as useless and step into a better solution. It's either that or death. Pick one. And her line, we learn more than when things go wrong than when they go right, is also good. It's failure's the best teacher. That's a common phrasing and a bunch of stuff. So yeah, her doing that, and Darren like stay at 1/8 impulse or whatever. He's like, but that's only this fast, and she says solid B, but you're lose marks because of the attitude, that kind of stuff. I think that was really good. How she kept people on the crisis as well. She told them to like concentrate on the job, not your feelings, which is something that other Star Trek shows should be more conscious of when there's big crises at play. And her conversation with Caleb, where she uses the metaphor of the plasma stream or whatever it is, to say you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're going to screw up a lot, but that's okay. It's like, I feel like I'm going to be really arrogant still, and she's like, yeah, probably. And it's the best part of the episode. And I think Reno is the MVP of the season for, and that's a microcosm of why that is.
I agree.
I thought it was really interesting too, Craig, the wonderful line that you just quoted from Reno. That's exactly where she was found in Discovery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She was on a ship. Everybody but one or two people of her crew had died, and she's like, I'm an engineer. The body is just like a more complicated organic machine, and she had kept the dude alive. So I just like, that's exactly where we found Reno in Disco. Oh my gosh. She's literally speaking from her own experience there. I thought that was phenomenal. I loved seeing her in the captain's chair. Ever since we were introduced to Jet Reno, I was just absolutely delighted every time she was on screen, because I think she is hilarious. But she also gives like such, like, it's almost like she's like the ninja move, like dialogue, mic dropper, with this. She'll say something really poignant, but having like caught you off guard by having made you laugh 3 seconds.
I like when Aki ordered her to make the plasma leak worse, and she says, well, we don't usually do that, but okay.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I adore every second that Reno is on screen. I think she's wonderful. Just such a great character.
Ian, the cadets kind of come into themselves a little bit here. Genesis gets the con for the first time. Darum gets to be the pilot, and Jaden is helping the doctor, and Sam is tasked with this algorithm situation. What about these cadets are you most impressed with?
Yeah, Genesis seats the con to Darren at some point too, so it's it's not for very long.
She sits in the chair for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's a solid couple of minutes, but no, it was a good moment for her. I think, again, I loved all the stuff that Reno was doing in these sequences. I liked all of the the moments individually of personal or professional or both triumph that these characters had. Really my only gripe is kind of what I said at the beginning, where I wanted the full cadet cadre to come together in some unifying moment all at once, and the plot dictated that they all kind of be separated and face their own challenges, maybe in pairs or individually, and that's fine. Like, truly, I think they all handled that very well. I loved all the teachable moments here. I think the show, this is a school in space, true, but like, this is a school, and when we see the dynamics, and it can take all sorts of different shapes, like this is a cadets in the field, obviously under extreme circumstances, but we can recognize what this is. And I think when we have the opportunities to have these characters like learn and grow, especially together, the show is at its best. And so I liked all of that element of this episode.
I wish they hadn't undercut Genesis getting in the chair with the joke. It felt a bit MCU to me, as in she sits in the chair and says, "I think I have to pee," and we're supposed to laugh. But I feel like that whenever they do it in a Marvel movie as well, it just makes the moment less powerful.
I don't know. I found it pretty relatable. Like, something's important about it. I was like, oh, dang it, I gotta pee.
Yeah, it didn't bump me, but I mean, I know what you're talking about, but it didn't take me out of it.
What's the first thing she says when she's in the chair? Is it some powerful statement, some powerful command that gets people in there? No, it's a joke. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with Ashley and Ian. I kind of laughed. I totally get the criticism, and I don't argue it. I think it's going to work for some people, and it's not going to work for others. It's anyway. Jaden doesn't get a whole lot in this episode, which I would have liked to have seen a little more from him, as the Klingon warrior who is a medical student. He doesn't get to do a lot of medicine necessarily.
No, he gets really nothing to do. He's just kind of standing there trying to help the doctor, but he has no idea what he's doing. So it's like, you're medical. So again, opportunity for him to step up. And then when Genesis comes down to where they are, he's like, yeah, I have no idea what's going on. I'm lost. And then that's him. So, and then he comes up with it. Oh, wait, you're talking in a language that doesn't make sense. Maybe the doctor's also talking in a language that doesn't make sense. And it's one of those, okay, I can see where you're drawing the line here, but yeah, it's not really a powerful Jaden takes agency moment.
Yeah, I feel like there could have been an opportunity to do a little bit more there.
Could have healed someone. He could have used a dermal regenerator on someone, or just something innocuous like that.
But why isn't the doctor doing that? Oh, right, because he's a little busy too. Caleb Mir throughout this has both a lot to do and almost nothing to do. I found it interesting that in our crew, right? Every time we have a Starship Assemble crew, you have your kind of typical tropes that the different characters will fall into. And for Starfleet Academy, Caleb is the de facto rogue of the group. He is the guy who can kind of sort of do a little bit of anything. And so as a result, characters like that kind of also get nothing to do until they're absolutely needed. And I kind of loved how sneaky it was for him to be on the Athena working with Jet. Jet brings him down to engineering. She gets him coached up, kind of coaxes him through his own insecurities and anxieties, and he comes out of it properly and appropriately. So much so that he also volunteers to buy Sam more time to work on building the algorithm. What was your take on Caleb Mir in this episode?
I thought it was a, logical progression of his character's journey through this story. I mean, again, just to echo the points that we've been making, I wish that we had a little bit more time for these things to develop with, more at a more organic pace. But I do think Caleb's journey has been paced maybe the best. Makes sense. He's got the full beginning of the season to end of the season through line here. So he's got a lot of screen time. He's a lot of other characters to interact with. We've had a lot of time with him. So I thought that his embracing of his friends, his classmates, his decision to stay at the very end, all of that tracked emotionally for me. I felt like it all resonated. I wasn't really sure what I'd make of this character when the show started. Certainly before the show started, I had no take on it or sense of it whatsoever, and I'm on board. I'm interested in what happens to him, what's been happening to him, the journey that he's on. I like where he ends things with his relationship to being at Starfleet Academy and his mom. I love that his mom is still there at the end. I know we're not talking about that yet, but like I like that he didn't have to go through one last like formative trauma at the end of this episode and season. I was a little worried that they would go in that direction. I'm glad that they didn't. It just feels like he's coming into himself finally.
The most satisfying emotional beat in the episode comes from Caleb. It's when he willingly lets Terima in and embraces their mental connection that they have, and like that's a true sign of growth from him, because he was so resistant to that before, but now he's embracing it fully, and it's used for plot reasons as well, because it's how they find Braka. Fine, but I think that's a good melding of growth and the plot. So he, the one thing doesn't happen without the other. It is about him being truly vulnerable, being truly open with Terima, and fully and cutting the bravado completely. Just fully embracing what he feels for her, and letting her see it, and letting her to use a dodgy phrasing, letting her inside him.
Right.
Well, that was something that we discussed, Mike, in episode 6 with Cipriana, about how Caleb is very slowly learning that vulnerability is strength. Letting people in, letting people into your inner world, learning to trust other people, that is strength. It's not weakness. It's not, in one way, read a book about this recently, and the terminology used was, when you are vulnerable with other people, it is an act of trust, because you are giving them emotional ammunition with which they could decimate you. And Caleb is scared to death of doing that for, based on his world experience. Yeah.
And as someone that has used that ammunition on his friends not one episode ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so here, when we see him and Terima, why are we here? It's because it's more private, but him learning that vulnerability, him having opened up to Terima in this deep way, that's the secret sauce. That's the magic that makes what they are able to do in the finale possible. They never would have found him without that connection.
Yeah, I like the construct of it when Caleb first invites her in to the yellow flower field and kind of explains, like, hey, listen, you make me feel safe, and only you can do this. I believe in you. I trust you. And I thought it was a beautiful moment when she takes the neural inhibitor off. It's not just like, hey, I trust you here. It's, I trust you everywhere. Yes, you have this incredible power. You call yourself the monster girl, but I don't see you that way. And it's through that act of openly letting her in that she finally understands she doesn't have to be afraid of herself either. And not only is that a great lesson for viewers and for modern audiences, but it's totally in line with everything we've seen in Star Trek before.
It's a lot better than Troy holding Worf's hand while he tries to target the scimitar, anyway.
We don't have to talk about that movie, man.
I don't mind Nemesis, but that's a stupid moment. It's just to give her something to do.
I don't even remember. Again, I don't even remember which movie
Nemesis.
that was. Oh, okay. I have only seen that once, and it was more than 10 years ago.
But he gets his big monologue when he gets over to the Athena, and he boards the ship to buy Sam some time. And Craig, I wanted to ask you what you thought about his final big speech. He found himself. He's talking to his mom. He's opening up to her and saying, "Mom, please, I just need you to listen right now." And he tells her, like, I found a home.
Yeah, it's where we expected him to be by the end of the season. That's been his arc throughout, the acceptance of Starfleet and accepting that he's part of this community. And there was sincerity to what he said. The idea of, I have something to offer here. I've laughed just for the sake of laughing. It's incredible just to feel that safe and secure. And he's taken that for granted in some ways, as in he hasn't fully appreciated what that means for him. But it's this idea of I like this life. I've been trying to pretend that I don't, but I really like it. And if you look at Caleb because this is a new show, as a reluctant Star Trek fan, he's the guy that starts off with, Star Trek isn't cool. I don't want to be associated with this. And at the end, he's like, Star Trek's really cool because of all the stuff that it has. And then his final log entry is, I'm doing a log entry. That's how in I am now. That's it. I'm a nerd now, but look at me. I'm a Star Trek nerd, and I'm proud of being a Star Trek nerd. And I'm so handsome, tall, and ripped like all other Star Trek fans. Isn't that great? So
I look
all of them.
the part of nerd.
Yeah.
I mean, that definitely describes me, handsome, tall, and ripped.
Yeah, all Star Trek fans are almost coming out of their shirts, but possibly in different ways.
Yeah.
Just, are you almost coming out up here? Or
That's exactly. Yeah. It was a very sincere monologue, and it's backed up by the development over the course of the season. And it wouldn't work as well if he didn't have the moment with Terima before, because that's him admitting to it on a micro level and on a emotional level. So, it's not just something he's saying to win the debate like he did earlier in the season.
Right.
Yeah, and coming from the background that he does, he saw so much of this initially as, frivolous or unimportant. Like, how can I focus on like having fun when my mom is out there suffering, and like how can I make friends when I've only lived a life of desperate survival and isolation and being in it for myself. Like, how can I open myself up? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, this isn't what's important. And then by the end of the season, he's like, no, this is what's the most important. Making connections, being happy, laughing. Like, that's what's actually important and what I have been blind to until this experience opened my eyes. Like, I love that part of his journey.
Yeah, and in just a couple episodes ago, he straight up asked Lieutenant Tilly, how is this important to commanding a starship? And now you see him here in the pivotal moment, the climax of the show. He is giving a one-man monologue.
Yeah, he's literally like Tilly says, so much of command is political theater. And this is literally political theater. On screen, broadcast live, we are doing some serious political theater here, and he nails it.
Yeah, but he was always going to nail that, though, as identified earlier in the season. Whatever he turns his hand to, he's very good at. So, like I say, you need the Terima beat in order to realize that he means it. Because otherwise he is just doing what Jaden said he did in the 4th episode. You don't believe this. You're just saying it to win.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good note. I also like that Terima's mental telepathic capabilities are not what are used to end the conflict altogether. It's just used to find where the location is that they're hiding. So I like that they didn't lean into that trope of this all-powerful being saves the day.
It would have been quite funny. We're going to beam you in and you're going to melt their brains, okay? There we go.
Yeah, I was like, let's do that on live TV. That'll be cool. We talked about, I perceived Terima as kind of like almost like this Jean Grey type character. And I've, been listening to some other discussions, and some folks are perceiving like her emotional inhibitor as kind of an analog for, or analogy for depression medication. And so I for me, and maybe it's just because I'm such like a comic book geek and I'm so steeped in that sort of thing that it never once crossed my mind to consider that like that might be perceived as depression or anxiety medication or whatever. And like, oh, if you just stop taking your meds, then, you'll come through this. And no. I don't think that is what we're saying here. You know, as much as, you know, modern Trek is kind of scoffed at by a certain segment of folks for dealing with their emotions and mental health, I don't think that's at all like what we're doing. So for me, this idea like, hey, it's not about inhibiting your power. To me, this read more Captain Marvel than anything else. Where in that first Captain Marvel film where she realized she has an inhibitor, and she's like, I've been fighting with one hand tied behind my back. That is how I have perceived Terima. She's Jean Grey. She's Captain Marvel, and it's her coming into her own power. And I find that, as a woman, I find that very empowering.
I have read it the same way as you have read it thus far. I did see similar commentary about possibly the neuroinhibitor being a stand-in for various different types of medication that might regulate a person's emotions. And I can kind of see where folks are drawing that parallel to. But yeah, I viewed it very similarly as you, Ashley, where it seems like Terima has one hand tied behind her back, and once she learns how to harness it, oh boy, watch out.
Well, and again, I say this as a woman who women are always accused, oh, you're being too emotional about this. You got to think about it logically, as if those two things can't like, you know, be congruous, you know? And that's certainly not what we see here. The logical thing for them to do is find Nus. Well, how can we find him? You know, Caleb can find him with his connection to his mom, but we can only do that through that emotional connection with Terima.
Yeah.
And her learning how to use those abilities versus, you know, just like, oh, you're being too emotional. You need to calm down. Like, you know, stop being emotional, because that's somehow wrong. And suck it. It's not. It like, that is so powerful to me. Oh my gosh. This is stuff that's just occurring to me as we're talking about it. So I'm getting really hyped about this. This is great.
There does need to be a little bit of clarity on it, though, because the Doctor did say in episode 8 that if she wasn't inhibited, then she's a potential danger to herself. There's some kind of medical reasoning there. So if she decides to melt a bunch of people's brains again, it might kill her. So there's that in the mix as well. I completely agree with the whole, her realization that she shouldn't be inhibited or doesn't need to be inhibited. And, you know, this whole notion of, it's quite common, and I'm saying this as a man, but there's quite a common thread for female characters in TV shows about having to make themselves less to fit in. And there's all that metaphor thrown in there as well. But they have muddied it slightly by saying, if you don't wear this inhibitor, you are literally a danger to yourself. This is for medical reasons. So I wonder if that's just not true or misunderstood or anything. They probably won't go into it, but it was mentioned. So I think it's worth mentioning here.
Yeah. Well, and I think you could argue that it's misunderstood.
Maybe it is.
I mean, when you look at, like you when you look at history of, you know, back in the 50s, like, you know, if women suffered from depression, they were basically given a whole bunch of drugs and they were just tripping out, you know, and that was deemed, you know, quote unquote, medically necessary. And it wasn't, you know, we know more about depression and things like that now. And there's also like some inherent misogyny there as well. So I think I understand your point, Craig, and I see what you're trying to say. But I think here maybe what's being said is, hey, it's not a bad thing to have emotions. Those are good and can be used for good. When so often we're told, you know, that they are somehow bad, or you have to look at this unemotionally in order to do it right. And I'm like, well, that's not always true.
Well, I think it's a version.
It's important to understand.
Yeah. I think it's a version of what we've seen with the Vulcans too over the years of Trek lore, where, you know, we've seen them struggle with do we actually feel emotions? How do we deal with those emotions? You know, like mind melding, going from being this thing that's sort of like a taboo, or maybe even like not real, you know, to being something that we see Vulcans practicing much more regularly and you know, embracing. So it could be that there is a cultural thing that we do not yet have you know, eyes on about betazoids that we haven't learned about, that this is a part of, and we'll have that explored at greater depth in the future. I could see them, you know, dealing with it in a more sort of head-on way down the line, because it does seem otherwise like a bit of an odd thing to introduce to this show if you aren't going to use it to explore something thematically or philosophically down the road.
Yeah, because the last time that she was fully unleashed, she was in a coma for weeks. So I don't think you can really ignore that.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like the medical justification is kind of a loose sort of construct to force Terima into that status quo of the neural inhibitor is what you need to be wearing.
Yeah, that's completely what it is.
Until Caleb is given the impetus. Yeah. One more part to talk about here, the ending of the episode. Caleb Mir has his mom, and they are at Starfleet Academy. She's excited to go visit Earth for the first time. Summer is approaching, and Caleb indicates that, yeah, he'll be returning to the Academy. Ashley, I want to come to you first. The only thing missing from this was any sort of big resolution, some big party, but otherwise, the wrap-up, how did it work for you?
You know, I enjoyed it when Aki says, you know, you have to attend this big to-do with the president. I was like, oh, we're gonna get Shella Horstall? I'm so excited. I want to see President Rillick. And no, we don't get her. That was like my only like, oh, bummer sort of thing. But I think the wrap-up works for me. I was happy to see that we're not just throwing Anisha back in jail because she escaped or whatever. So for me, I like the wrap up. We're going on summer vacation. We're going to see some things. We're going to do some things. She's going to go to Earth, get to try Earth food for the first time. I love that. It's great. It's great. I'm really pleased with how this season has wrapped and has gone overall. I much better than I ever anticipated it being.
Craig, how about you?
I wish that Anisha had gone back to prison. I think that would have been a more appropriate ending, because regardless of what was said and what was misunderstood and what was then understood, she's still committed crimes. And part of the catharsis for her should have been accepting that she has to answer for those crimes because she did them. So, but then it doesn't have to be as tragic as it was before, because yes, she's in prison, but Caleb can come visit her whenever he wants. So that's something. And there's the understanding that actions have consequences, and we have to pay for those. You know, we have to pay for what we reap, what we sow, so to speak. So the fact that she just gets to go scot-free didn't really sit well with me. It's just, well, no, that she still did that. She was still an accessory to murder. She still should be in prison under the legal situation. So the fact that was just wrapped up so neatly was problematic for me. I just think that, like, I'm glad that she was still around, not killed, but I would have liked a bit more bittersweet thing. It's like, that's fine. You go off to be the Academy. I'll go finish my sentence because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what I've accepted as
I
the
think
right
she
thing.
did serve most of it, though, didn't she?
It was like 15 of the however many.
Yeah, I think she served a vast majority of it. I mean, she served enough that I would have been fine with them maybe paying a little bit of lip service of, like, you've got a probation officer to check in with or whatever. I mean, like, we see that sort of thing happening in the 21st century, and we're far from an evolved, progressive, you know, justice system. So I could see the Federation in the future being like, yeah, you know, we cede the error of our ways. We're working on a different model for justice, and, like, you're on probation, whatever. Like, I didn't need to see her punished anymore. I thought the 15 years in prison was probably a stand-in for that. But yeah, I like where things ended up. I certainly like that they didn't. I know, Craig, you and I talked about this possibility last week of, her having to like sacrifice herself or Braka killing her. Just I was bracing myself for some last like trauma for Caleb to endure, and I was really glad that the show didn't force that on us or on him, and that regardless of where she's ending up, like, I really like that this season ended with, okay, they're together. This animating animosity with Braka is off the table. The formative trauma that he underwent has largely been processed and resolved. Maybe season 2 can be settling into more of the comfortable rhythms of the kind of show that this seems to want to be when it's at its best.
Yeah, good takeaway. Good takeaway. I thought the ending was really solid for what it needed to be. I was kind of surprised that there was no further big hero moments of coming together and slapping each other on the back. But I kind of like it. It's a bit more subdued in that way, and closing out on his first log entry is a neat way to do it.
Yeah, I like that log entry.
Okay, we have talked in depth about the finale, so we will come back to talk about the season at large, and I think in that discussion we can also talk about our theories for where we're going to go for season 2. So before we come to the closeout, Ashley, any final thoughts on the finale?
Well done. Watching the credits roll, one little tiny thing. It's hard to pause and get all the little details, but I loved, as the end credits are rolling, we get pictures of our cast as they were younger. Yeah. I thought that was really sweet, and the little profiles on there. My favorite little bit: Genesis secret skill party DJ. That's my girl. Yeah,
I love it.
So, anyway,
I love it. I saw Jet Reno had on her quote. It was, "I come after two voices," because she's slotted in after Stephen Colbert and another individual.
Oh, the
Brett Marlin.
Brett Marlin. Yep,
yeah, who's the computer, ship's computer.
Craig, any final thoughts on the finale?
Just to echo what I said earlier, I found it disappointing because it was counter to what I would want from a season finale of a Starfleet Academy show, and the stakes was something that I just couldn't parse. I just really hated how universe-ending it is. I really hate universe-ending plots anyway, which we get every season in Star Trek at the moment, it seems, certainly in this era, and as in the 32nd century era. It's just, there was an annual apocalypse that Discovery weren't dealing with for some reason this year, and that's the way it is. So disappointing. I do think it did have some solid character beats, and I really hope next season focuses more on that, and we don't have an end of level bad guy to fight at the end of season 2 like we did with season 1.
Ian, final thoughts on this finale?
I largely echo what everyone said. I was a little surprised that, I was glad that we saw a glimpse of Lura there at the very end, but Gina Yashiro must have had some scheduling conflicts with the second half of production, right? Like she's not in.
She's in the beginning as well. She's a hologram with fans at the beginning of the episode.
Oh, okay. She's in the hologram. Yeah. But yeah, they got her back for this episode. But it's been a while since we've seen her, so I was glad to catch a couple glimpses of her this week. But it's odd. I'm looking at IMDb, and both she and Robert Picardo are both credited with 6 episodes, but his presence is felt much more consistently through the season, where she was very front-loaded. I hope they find a better balance. I like her as a character and as a presence on the show. So, not really much of a note to go out on, but and Jet Reno is obviously the MVP of this episode and season. I agree with Craig. She's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that sums up the Doctor, doesn't it? When he's there, he's there. You can't ignore him. Ever. He's just.
It's a credit.
I think they use Lura Thok about as much as they need to. one thing I do like about the way they use the adult characters in this is they don't, or at least they usually don't, overpower the main characters. Like Laura is a supporting character, so there's no need for her to be shoehorned in every week. And if I imagine if she was there all the time, you'd be like, why was she here? So the fact that you're wanting more of her, I think, is the better sign.
Well, I think we can talk about this in our season wrap up. But I do think that it would be great to see Laura with Jaden paired up more specifically. That dynamic that we were introduced to in episode 4 is something I'd like to see more of, from the mentor-mentee relationship. Thank you all for joining us for another season of Star Trek coverage. Check out our full listing of episodes over at www.wearestarfleetpod.com, where you can also learn more about us, your hosts. Do connect with us on our socials at Starfleet Pod on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. A big thank you to our guests this season, Violet Hammond, Earl Green, Jeff Owen, Cipriana Cuevas, and Kurt North. And of course to you, our listeners. Hopefully you've liked everything you've heard, and if so, please give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform. We are part of the Film Stories Podcasting Network, featuring Make It So, a Star Trek Legacy podcast hosted by Jeff Owen, where he sits with various Trekkie guests to discuss the next generation era of Star Trek. Stay tuned for more from We Are Starfleet. We'll be back for more with a look at the first season of Star Trek Starfleet Academy in its full context. My hosts today have been Ian Buckley, Craig McKenzie, and Ashley Thomas. Definitely make sure you check out our show notes and our website to find more of where you can hear their lovely voices. And until next time, folks, in the words of the esteemed Commander Jet Reno, show me pretty streaks of light.
That number on your dash says it's freezing, and your dry winter hands, they agree. O'Keefe's Working Hands, the hand cream in the green package, instantly relieves dry, cracked skin. Winter's tough, but your hands don't have to be. O'Keefe's Working Hands.